The first point today start with the first topic, respiratory system.
استأذنك بس الحصة نسجلها؟
as like مش مشكلة. هاتي هنا ممكن تحط ال Okay. Okay, today let's start with this topic for grade 9 biology Igcse. It's called respiratory system. The first point, by the end of the session, you should be able to understand 4 points. The first point for this class start with how to identify the structure of respiratory system. This is the first point. And you should do comparison between processes inside respiratory system. The first one, inspiration, and the second one, expirations. The first point today in students at the class, you should identify what are structures that included in respiratory system. The first point today is called respiratory system. This one system inside the human body, very important point, and to have different functions. The first one for structures, identify the structures. The first point, larynx. Number 2, trachea. Number 3, trachea have cartilages. What do you mean cartilages? Cartilages, one kind of muscles that supporting trachea and that keep it open inside this to do gases exchange. The second point have 2 branches. The first one is called bronchus and the second one is called bronchus. So the first point or last point from bronchus it's called alveoli. Again for larynx, the first point, number 2 trachea have both branching and it's called bronchus. Each one bronchus have the smallest branching. It's called bronchus. And the end part of this one is called alveoli. Alveoli, this part is very important point. But let's move. Let's start with the second part for practical. And we should distinguish between parts in these samples. This one samples illustrates structures for respiratory system. The first one is called trachea, this one. And the second one is called bronchus. And this one lungs, left side, and the second one right side. This one left and this one right. And these samples you should identify which one left and which one right side. This one it's left lung and this one it's right lung. If again for this sample the same one, this one sample from practical parts inside the laboratory illustrates structures of the respiratory system such as lungs and diaphragm down this one. Okay, this is the first part for structures. Again for the first part for this class, you should identify all structures. Again for larynx, this one. Number 2 trachea, this one. And trachea have one kind from cartilages. Cartilages, this one kind of muscles that keeping this open to get this exchange occur or takes place. Again, trachea have both branching. The first one is called bronchus. And bronchus branching in the smallest part is called bronchus. Bronchus have the end part is called alveoli. This one is very important structure inside respiratory system. Let's move the second part for alveoli. So this one came to alveoli. Alveoli may be millions, thousands that found inside the lungs. What do you mean alveoli? And how gases exchange occurred between respiratory system and pulmonary artery. The first point, what do you mean pulmonary artery? This one is called pulmonary artery that carry blood from the heart. So this one point, very important point. You should distinguish between alveoli, gases included inside alveoli, and the gases inside pulmonary artery. The first one, this one, comes from the heart. This one comes from the heart, and this one, lungs. That means there are differences between potential. The first one, pressure, this one O2, high pressure, and this one CO2, high pressure. So by diffusions, that due to the high pressure, or you can say concentration gradient, the first one, O2, movement from high pressure that by diffusions into pulmonary artery. So pulmonary artery, high pressure from oxygen. And in the opposite directions, carbon dioxide move from pulmonary artery with high concentrations of carbon dioxide into inside alveoli. That means gas exchange between alveoli and pulmonary artery. Again, from the first part, from structures, and you should do comparison, do distinguish between the second part or the first part between pulmonary artery and the second part or structure of the alveoli. Alveoli, this one place is very important where gas exchange occurred. So I have one question. The first question in this class, what is the difference between gas exchange and this one, gas exchange and respirations. So this one important point for this class. What are the differences between respirations and gas exchange? This one reaction and this one reaction. This one process, this one process. Gas exchange, that means gas exchange between pulmonary artery and alveoli, between oxygen and the carbon dioxide. The second one, it's called respiration reaction. This another way, and this one reactions occur in any cell inside the human body that produce energy. So this one for gas exchange between alveoli and pulmonary artery for carbon dioxide and oxygen. The second one for respiration reactions that occur in any part inside the cell that's used for producing energy. This one, and it's called ATP. And again, the first part from this class, we should identify the structures of respiratory system. And I have one question, this is a very important point. That what's the difference between gas exchange process and respiration? Many students have many errors, can't distinguish between what the meaning of gas exchange and respirations. What the meaning gas exchange? Can say exchanging between alveoli and pulmonary artery. Because alveoli have a high concentration of oxygen and pulmonary have a high concentration from carbon dioxide. So this by one process is called diffusions. So the second one for respirations, this one reaction occurred in any cell inside the human body for producing energy ATP. ATP, this you can say universal energy inside the human body. This one part from this class. The first one identifies the structure of respiratory system. Again, you should distinguish between alveoli and pulmonary system. Or you can say pulmonary artery that come from the heart. These questions, what are the differences between the concentration between O2 and the CO2? Inside alveoli, inside the lungs, a high concentration from oxygen. Inside pulmonary artery, high concentration from carbon dioxide. That means from all parts of the body. And that means from respiratory system. Between this gas exchange occurred O2 diffusion or diffuses from alveoli to pulmonary artery and in the opposite directions CO2 from pulmonary artery to alveoli. I have another questions to do to understand this point. The third part or the second part for inspiration and expiration. So sorry. Inspiration and expirations. This one can say practical part inside this class. So this one sample, we should distinguish between two processes. What I mean inspirations and what I mean expirations. And you should distinguish between movements of structures, such as rib cage and diaphragm. Which one? This one lungs, and this one trachea, down this part, and this one diaphragm. So, due to this picture and due to this pictures, these figures, this one and this one. Again, each student to understand what are the differences between inspirations and expirations. Look at me. That means the same this point. Inspiration. This one. Look at me for this one for chest. For inspirations, oxygen get inside the human body and the rib cage get rises or upwards. And diaphragm, this one contract and lower, go down.